Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Sunday and we've got to talk about the last episode of Creature Commandos. So this will be our complete spoiler breakdown of everything that happened in the show. So let's jump right into it. So today we've got to talk a little bit about Creature Commandos. It is the final episode of the season that aired just a few days ago, and now we're going to break it all down for you. This series has been really fun and it is an awesome way to kick off the new DCU. Now, I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about why this is in this video, as well as kind of break down what happened and why it's important. But of course, that does mean that there are going to be spoilers. So, if you haven't seen the episode and you don't want to have those spoilers, then I urge you to pause the video, go watch the episode, and then come back and be a part of our conversation, because this episode was so good that you definitely need to see it. But we are going to be breaking it all down. So if you're still here, let's get into this episode and kind of break down what happened. So the episode is episode 7, A Very Funny Monster. And this episode has flashbacks with Nina. And Nina is born with her lungs outside of her body, while her father, this scientist, tries to build a device to help her breathe. Now, her mother doesn't seem too keen on this idea. She actually thinks that she's suffering, so she doesn't stick around. But the father is devoted to making sure that his daughter has the best life she can have. So he builds this machine, and eventually, after years, his experiments went from building a machine to help her breathe to actually making her into this mutant, into this metahuman, if you will, into this creature that she becomes. He actually makes her into it by accident. And then of course he feels bad, but she's happier and she can breathe underwater. So he's convinced this is going to lead to her best life. So after years of homeschooling, he does in fact send her to a school, at which point she is bullied, not a shock, by the other kids. There is a kid in this that kind of resembles Lex Luthor, and part of me actually wonders if this kid is Lex Luthor that is bullying her and telling her to call herself a frog. He says, "You look like a frog, say ribbit frog," and all this stuff. And this leads her into running away and living in Star City sewers. Now, Star City is important to the DCU because it's also the home of a superhero. And that is going to come into play at some point in time. She lives in the sewers until she's captured by the police, at which case her father tries to stop the police from harming her, but he is killed in the process, and she is taken prisoner. So, yeah, of course, we know that this ultimately leads to her position in the Creature Commandos. Now, in the present, Eric finds Task Force M, and he battles with the bride, who shoots him and leaves him for dead. So he doesn't really get a chance to tell her that the princess is innocent. Only the thing is that they know they have to kill the princess. So upon finding the princess, they decide that they are going to task Nina with assassinating her, since Nina can go underwater. And that's the whole thing. Nina can go underwater and breathe, so she's the perfect assassin. The princess is in the swimming pool, as she apparently does every day, and it's the perfect time to get to her. All they have to do is get past the guards. So Nina can go underwater, get undetected by the guards, and stab her. And that's what they were going to do. But Weasel sees her as that little girl that he tried to save. the little girl from his episode, his origin story. So once again, that sort of comes back into play and allows Weasel to be more human than some of the major characters that you meet in some of these stories. And that's something that is extraordinary to see. The fact that they can make Weasel seem like he's human is something that doesn't cease to amaze me. And Weasel does come across like he legitimately cares. He also remembers that she played with him when he was visiting them the first time. And she has blonde hair like the little girl that he saved. So all of that factors into his decision. As Nina goes underwater, he lets out a sound and starts running towards the princess. This alerts the princess to the assassination attempt. And she, in turn, stabs Nina. Nina floats up, and she is apparently dead. So this leads to the others being almost captured, but at the very last minute, Waller calls, having talked to Rick Flag. She knows that they made a terrible mistake. The princess is not the bad guy. Only here's the thing. They had seen a little bit of a video when they came to the castle that showed that they weren't the only monsters that came to visit the princess. So now that becomes a little bit important here in a minute. Waller wants them to not kill the princess. After all, she learned of Clayface's deception. So now the bride is left to her own devices. And she has her orders. She sneaks into the princess's office and she says to her, I know what you did. My boss says you're not the bad guy, but I kind of know. And she said, you know, I'm not going to kill you for wanting to take over the world. I'm not going to kill you for all the horrible things you're about to do. She says, I'm going to kill you because you killed the only friend I've ever known. And she shoots the princess. Now, this, of course, means that that future has been prevented. And the bride and all of them end up going back to the States. They are now heroes for having stopped this because Clayface not only had deceived Waller and Flag and Eric, but also he was the person that came to the castle to see her. Only now she's one person down, and Waller knows that she doesn't necessarily have Rick Flag for the time being to run this thing. So she needs a leader, and she tells the bride that she can be this leader. So she convinces the bride to lead the team. And the bride walks into the room and she sees Phosphorus. She sees Nosferatu, Callus, Weasel, a rebuilt GI robot, and King Shark. And now she has her team. Now in a post-credit scene, they also show what became of Eric. He recovered from his wounds, and he is now living with the old woman that lived next to Victor's mansion. Now, that is how the episode ends, and that is the setup for the Superman movie. So even though it's not going to directly impact the events of the Superman movie, this is why it's important, because now at the end of this episode, we have a closer version of the monsters that we get in the Creature Commandos. We have what is probably one of the closer teams. Now, there are a few that don't belong in there. King Shark being in there is something that is kind of new. And Weasel, of course, being in there is new. But we have Phosphorus, we have Nosferatu, and we have Callus, the mummy. Now, this is good because this is going to be the team going forward within the movies. And this is a very interesting team. Now, of course, I don't think that Nina is dead. I think that somehow she will survive into either the movies or into next season because this has been renewed for another season. Now, another reason that this is important is because it helped to set up so many things. You do have this future that has been stopped now. This is not going to happen any longer. So now this new series of events is what is unfolding in the Superman movie because you can stop the future from happening if you know what to stop. But ultimately, you're never going to stop all the bad guys, and that's what we're dealing with here. You're never going to be able to stop all of the bad guys. So Superman will have his own set of bad guys going forward. But I definitely think that's why Rick Flag is in this movie, to tell us how important the Creature Commandos are going to be to the DCU. And after all, this is the God and Monsters chapter. So we've seen the monsters, so now we're getting to meet Superman, who a lot of people in the DC universe often think of as a god. So setting it up so that you see the monsters and then you see what people think of the godlike figures in the DCU, it sort of sets up a scenario that can lead us into very interesting things. Because you already saw from the trailer that there are some people who kind of think of Superman as a monster. He is one of the monsters that they're used to seeing. It's a nice way to set it up because Creature Commandos has made the monsters a thing. And Superman being an alien, there's going to be some people who don't think of him as a god figure, but as a monster. And that's really going to be important because if you didn't know, Batman already kind of doesn't think of him as a godlike figure. Batman thinks of him as a threat a lot of times. But Batman knows that he's only a threat if he turns bad. So I love the idea of them setting up the monsters and then kind of showing us the Superman movie next. It opens up the door for them to do a lot of things. But that is where I am going to leave it off to you guys. I want to know what you guys are thinking about this. Did you watch this episode? And if you did, what did you think about it? Do you think Nina is really dead, or do you think she will somehow be alive? Do you think that this is going to be the last incarnation of the Creature Commandos that we see before season 2? Or do you think that some events are going to transpire where maybe by next season we do get other variations of a team? Or do you think that this is going to have a live action impact before the next season? And what do you think about how it affects the Superman movie? How do you think it's going to affect the Superman movie? As always, we want to hear from you guys, so make sure you are leaving us that comment in the comment box below, letting us know what you think. Don't forget to share this video with all of your friends. They're going to want to be a part of this crazy conversation we're having. And then make sure you hit that like button. It's free, it helps the channel, and we really do appreciate it. And Miko says we need more subscribers. And look at this face. You don't want to disappoint Miko. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell while you're down there so you don't miss a single video we do. And then friends, at the end of the day, I know it, you know it, and Miko knows it. Fandom is family.